Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Loretta Lynn, the coal miner's daughter who rewrote country music. Few figures in American music shaped the soul of a genre the way Loretta Lynn did. Rising from the hills of Kentucky with little more than a fierce spirit and a voice full of truth, she turned real life into country gold. Over a career that spanned more than 6 decades, she became one of the most influential songwriting voices the genre ever produced, a trailblazer for women, and a cultural icon whose story resonated far beyond Nashville. Humble roots. Hard realities. Born Loretta Webb on April 14, 1932, in the small mining community of Butcher Hollow, Kentucky. She grew up as the second of 8 children in a household where money was tight and life demanded grit. Her father was a coal miner, a fact she carried in her identity and later immortalized in her signature song, Coal Miner's Daughter. Those early years weren't glamorous, but they gave her something sturdier. An honest voice and a deep understanding of working-class life. Married at just 15 to Oliver Doolittle Lynn, Loretta moved to Washington State, where her husband encouraged her to pursue music. What started as playing her $17 guitar in small bars soon took on a life of its own. A natural songwriter with something to say, Lynn wasn't just singing, she was writing. And she wrote with raw, unfiltered clarity about women's lives in a way country music hadn't seen. Her songs tackled everyday struggles and taboos alike: heartbreak, poverty, cheating husbands, birth control, divorce, female independence. Tracks like Don't Come Home, A Drinkin', Fist City, and The Pill made headlines, ruffled feathers, and carved out new space for women to tell their truth. Even when radio stations banned her songs, they couldn't stop her rise. Listeners related to her realism, humor, toughness, and vulnerability. She had a rare ability to turn pain into poetry and stubbornness into rhythm. Nashville royalty. By the 1960s and 1970s, Loretta Lynn was a country superstar. She scored dozens of charting singles, released hit after hit, and became the first woman to win the CMA's Entertainer of the Year award in 1972. Her tandem with Conway Twitty became one of the most beloved duos in country music history. One of the defining moments of her legacy came with the 1976 autobiography Coal Miner's Daughter, later adapted into an Oscar-winning film starring Sissy Spacek. The movie brought Lynn's story to the masses and cemented her place in American cultural memory. Later career and enduring influence. Lynn continued performing and recording well into her later years, often collaborating with younger artists who saw her as a hero. Her 2004 album Van Leer Rose, produced by Jack White, gave her career a roaring revival and introduced her music to a new generation. The record won multiple Grammys and showcased her ability to evolve while staying true to her roots. Loretta Lynn passed away on October 4, 2022, at her ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, leaving behind a legacy as towering as any in American music. Why she still matters. Loretta Lynn's music remains timeless because she never pretended to be anything other than herself. She wrote about the lives of women who weren't often heard, blazing a path for countless artists who came after her. She was bold, tender, funny, relentless, and strikingly honest. Her story is the story of someone who came from nothing, told the truth even when it cost her, and changed the sound of a whole genre in the process. Loretta Lynn wasn't just the coal miner's daughter. She was country music's straight-shooting heart. A deeper look at Loretta Lynn's life, music, and lasting legacy. Music born from real life. One of the most fascinating things about Loretta Lynn is that she wasn't trained, polished, or shaped by the industry. She didn't enter country music through a talent scout or a songwriting factory. Instead, she lived the stories she sang. Her early songwriting process was famously down to earth. Loretta would scribble lyrics on scraps of paper, napkins, even cardboard if that's what she had around. She often said she wrote on my nerves, meaning she wrote about whatever bothered her, amused her, or set her spirit on fire. That authenticity became her signature. And because she understood working-class struggles firsthand, she could write with astonishing emotional accuracy. Her songs weren't abstract, they felt like conversations in a kitchen. Heart-to-heart talks between friends. Breaking barriers for women in country music. Country music in the 1960s was dominated by male voices and conservative themes. Loretta stepped into that world with songs that challenged norms, sometimes bluntly. She wasn't afraid to write songs that told off cheating husbands, encouraged women to stand up for themselves, openly referenced sexuality and birth control, highlighted emotional and financial hardships, poked fun at social expectations. When The Pill came out in 1975, many radio stations refused to play it because of its bold take on women's reproductive freedom. But fans loved it, and the song became one of her biggest hits. That moment alone showed just how far ahead of her time she was. Despite the backlash she sometimes received, Loretta didn't posture as a rebel. She always insisted she was simply telling the truth as she saw it. That honesty helped reshape the narrative of women in country music. The power of friendship and collaboration. Loretta's partnership with Conway Twitty is legendary. Their chemistry was warm, playful, and wholly natural. They recorded hit duets like Louisiana Woman, Mississippi Man, After the Fire Is Gone, Lead Me On. Their performances felt like genuine conversations, fueled by mutual respect and deep musical intuition. Twitty called Lynn the best friend a man could ever have, and their duo became one of the most successful in country history. Loretta also had a close bond with Patsy Cline. Cline became a mentor and friend during Loretta's early years in Nashville, helping her navigate the music industry. Loretta often said that Patsy taught her how to survive with grace and strength. The Hurricane Mills era. In the 1970s, Loretta and her husband bought a large plantation in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. It became her home, muse, and an eventual tourist attraction. Fans still visit the property for concerts, museums, campgrounds, and events. Hurricane Mills wasn't just a home, it was a living piece of her legacy. She invited fans into her world the same way she invited them into her songs, openly and generously. Awards, honors, and cultural recognition. Loretta Lynn's list of honors is almost endless. First woman to win the CMA Entertainer of the Year, Kennedy Center Honors recipient, Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, Presidential Medal of Freedom, numerous #1 hits and gold albums. But the accolades, while impressive, tell only part of the story. What truly made her iconic was how the world embraced her as a symbol of perseverance, honesty, and artistic bravery. Final years and continued creativity. Even into her 80s, Loretta kept writing and recording. Her later albums, including Van Leer Rose, 2004, and Full Circle, 2016, revealed that her creative spark never dimmed. Working with producer Jack White on Van Leer Rose brought her sound into a new era. Critics praised the album's raw intensity and emotional depth, and it brought Loretta to the attention of younger audiences who may not have grown up with her music. Her final album, Still Woman Enough, 2021, was a reflective work celebrating women in country music. It felt like a fitting closing chapter. A legacy that will never fade. Loretta Lynn changed the trajectory of country music by making space for women to speak boldly and truthfully about their experiences. Her influence can be heard in artists like Dolly Parton, Reba McEntire, Miranda Lambert, Casey Musgraves, and countless others who followed her path. She lifted up stories about everyday people, rural life, and the emotional thickets of relationships. And she did it with humor, grit, tenderness, and unwavering courage. Loretta Lynn isn't just remembered as the coal miner's daughter. She's remembered as the woman who carved her own mountain into the landscape of American music. The making of a country legend, Loretta Lynn's long road to immortality, early musical breakthrough. A DIY success story. Loretta's rise wasn't the result of a major label plan. In fact, her early career was completely self-driven. After writing her first songs, she and her husband Doolittle loaded up their car and personally took her recordings to radio stations across the West Coast. They stopped at every station they could find, hand-delivering her single, "I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl." Loretta would walk into a station, shy but determined, introduce herself, and ask the DJs to give the record a spin. It worked. The song started climbing the charts, and fans began writing letters requesting airplay. By the time she arrived in Nashville, the industry had already noticed. It's hard to imagine that kind of grassroots hustle today, but it set the tone for her entire career. Nothing was handed to her. She built it. The Nashville years. Honesty was her superpower. Once she signed with Decca Records and began working with the legendary Owen Bradley, Loretta's star took off. But even with major label support, she refused to sugarcoat her lyrics. She wrote from the perspective of a woman who'd lived through poverty, difficult marriage dynamics, jealousy, frustration, and fierce love. Songs like "You Ain't Woman Enough," Rated X, "One's on the Way," "Your Squaw is on the Warpath," "When You're Looking at Me, You're Looking at Country," all carried her same signature honesty. She didn't chase trends, she wrote life the way she saw it. This take it or leave it approach made her one of the most respected figures in Nashville. A complex marriage that fueled her material. Loretta's marriage to Doolittle Lynn was often stormy, something she discussed openly in her books and interviews. Their relationship was passionate but tumultuous. He supported her career and pushed her to perform, but he also struggled with drinking and jealousy. Loretta refused to hide the reality. Many of her songs came from moments in her marriage that hurt, challenged, or strengthened her. She used songwriting as a release valve, turning anger or confusion into anthems that resonated with millions of women facing similar struggles. Despite the drama, she always credited Doolittle as her biggest supporter, saying, "He believed in me before I believed in myself." Hollywood, fame, and becoming a cultural icon. The 1980 film Coal Miner's Daughter was a turning point for Loretta's legacy. Sissy Spacek delivered an uncanny performance, and the film became a classic of the musical biography genre. It broadened Loretta's fame beyond country fans. The movie captured her childhood poverty, her complicated marriage, her early rise to fame, her friendship with Patsy Cline, her inner strength and resilience. Spacek's Oscar win didn't just celebrate the film. It elevated Loretta's life story into American mythology. Millions who'd never heard a country song suddenly knew who Loretta Lynn was. Loretta Lynn, the writer. The heart of her genius. People often praise her voice, her charisma, her stage presence, but her greatest gift was her pen. Loretta wrote more than 160 songs, many of them deeply personal. She wrote about motherhood in "One's on the Way." She wrote about betrayal in "Fist City." She wrote about class struggle in "Coal Miner's Daughter." She wrote about desire in "When the Tingle Becomes a Chill." She didn't position herself as a feminist icon, but her lyrics became anthems for women demanding respect. She was simply telling the truth, and that truth was revolutionary. Relationship with fans. Country music's most approachable legend, Loretta had a reputation for being remarkably down-to-earth. Whether she was performing for thousands or chatting with visitors at her ranch, she treated people like neighbors. She told jokes, hugged fans, remembered faces, and made people feel welcome. Many fans tell stories of meeting her at Hurricane Mills and leaving with the feeling that they'd known her forever. That genuine warmth was part of her enduring appeal. How modern country artists carry her torch. Her influence runs deep. Dolly Parton said she admired Loretta's courage and grit. Miranda Lambert often cites Lynn as her songwriting inspiration. Casey Musgrave's bold, socially conscious lyrics echo Loretta's honesty. Even artists outside country, like Jack White and Sheryl Crow, have drawn from her raw emotional style. Loretta didn't just influence country's sound. She influenced the way artists think, write, and express themselves. Her passing and the emotional outpouring when Loretta Lynn passed away in 2022. Tributes poured in from every corner of the music world. Fans, artists, politicians, actors, and even younger performers who'd never met her felt the loss deeply. The message that kept appearing again and again was simple: she told the truth, and she told it beautifully. Why she endures. Loretta Lynn's legacy is built on the simple power of lived experience. She didn't hide her past or pretend life was perfect. She offered her struggles, her humor, her sass, and her heartbreak without apology. Her life is a reminder that greatness doesn't require privilege or polish. Sometimes it just takes a story worth telling and the bravery to sing it loudly. Loretta Lynn, the unvarnished truth behind the legend. Patsy Cline, the friend who changed everything. Loretta talked often about how lonely Nashville felt before Patsy Cline came into her life. When they met after Cline's car accident in 1961, it was the beginning of one of country music's most cherished friendships. Patsy invited Loretta into her home, took her shopping, helped her understand contracts, and coached her on stage presence. Patsy was polished. Loretta was still rough around the edges. But they fit like sisters. Their time together was short, ending with Cline's death in 1963, but Loretta carried Patsy's influence for the rest of her life. She kept Patsy's memory alive in interviews, on stage, and in her book, Me and Patsy Kickin' Up Dust. Losing Patsy was one of the defining heartbreaks of her early career. A songwriter who never cared about politeness. Country music in the 60s had a set of unwritten rules about what women could sing. Loretta ignored all of them. She wrote from the gut. And if the industry wasn't ready, that wasn't her problem. Radio stations banned Rated X for talking about divorced women being judged. The Pill for celebrating reproductive freedom. Wings Upon Your Horns for religious-themed sensuality. Fist City for threatening a rival who flirted with her husband. Instead of backing off, Loretta doubled down. She said, "If they're banning it, I must be doing something right." Her career is a masterclass in trusting your instincts even when the suits say no. The stage performer. Small woman. Big presence. Loretta wasn't flashy or choreographed. She didn't need to be. What you saw on stage was pure personality. She'd joke with the audience, roast her band, tell long stories between verses, and perform with an ease that came from playing hundreds of tiny bars before she ever reached the Opry. Her gowns, often handmade by her longtime friend and designer Tim Cobb, became part of her signature look: bright colors, sparkling stones, sweeping skirts. Elegant but still unmistakably Loretta. No matter how big the venue, she made it feel like a living room. The Hurricane Mills community. Hurricane Mills wasn't just home, it was an empire. The property grew into a museum dedicated to her career, a recreated coal miner's daughter cabin, a massive motocross track, shops, campgrounds, and event venues. A place where fans could wander freely. Loretta wandered the grounds sometimes and chatted with strangers like they were old neighbors. Even when her health declined, she loved waving at fans from her porch. Hurricane Mills became her personal version of Graceland, but warmer, more lived in, and still full of family. Loretta the mother, she raised 6 children while touring constantly, writing non-stop, and breaking barriers. Her kids have been remarkably protective of her legacy. Many of them joined her on tour or helped run the ranch. She balanced motherhood with a career that kept her on the road most of the year. This was one of the through lines of her songwriting. The push and pull between her public life and her private responsibilities. A hard life that never broke her. Loretta endured childhood poverty, early marriage, miscarriages, the loss of siblings, the deaths of 2 of her children, heart issues and strokes, the ups and downs of fame, a marriage that wasn't easy. Shifting musical landscapes, yet she stayed open-hearted, funny, and resilient. Her sense of humor never faded. Even in interviews late in life, she'd crack jokes with the same sharp timing she had in her 20s. Her influence on modern storytelling in music. Many women in today's country scene credit Loretta not just for the doors she opened but for the writing style she made possible. Before Loretta, songs about women's real emotions were rare. After Loretta, they became essential. You can feel her fingerprints in Miranda Lambert's Mama's Broken Heart, Casey Musgrave's Follow Your Arrow, Ashley McBride's Girl Goin' Nowhere, Carrie Underwood's Before He Cheats, Brandi Carlile's Confessional. Songwriting. Loretta normalized honesty in a genre built on storytelling. She inspired artists to write about messy relationships, heartbreaks, moral contradictions, and everyday life. A legend's late career renaissance. Van Leer Rose was a mic drop moment. Produced by Jack White, the album gave Loretta a gritty, rock-tinged sound that still felt unmistakably hers. Songs like Portland, Oregon, and Miss Being Mrs. showcased a woman who'd grown older but hadn't lost her fire. Critics raved. Younger fans discovered her. She toured again. She proved she wasn't a relic, she was eternal. Her death and the legacy she leaves behind. When she died in 2022, the tributes weren't just respectful. They were emotional. People cried. They shared personal stories. Her songs became a comfort playlist for millions. Loretta Lynn represented honesty, resilience, humor, authenticity, and the idea that greatness can rise from anywhere. Her voice isn't just part of American music, it's part of American identity. Loretta Lynn. The layers beneath the legend. A childhood that shaped her art more than any training could. Loretta's childhood in Butcher Hollow wasn't just a place she came from, it was the emotional backbone of her songwriting. No matter how famous she became, she never sanded down those memories. She grew up in a cabin with no electricity and no running water. Winters were cold and rough, summers were hot and dusty. Her father's shifts in the mines meant the family lived under constant economic pressure. Her mother ran the household with a quiet strength that Loretta admired her entire life. This gave Loretta 2 things: the work ethic of someone who knows survival isn't guaranteed, the emotional honesty of someone who never had the luxury of pretending life was perfect. That's why her songs hit different. She wasn't trying to be poetic. She was just telling the truth the way people back home told it, straightforward, unvarnished, and full of heart. The country music establishment didn't know what to do with her at first. When Loretta arrived in Nashville, she sounded like nobody else. She wasn't polished like Patsy Cline, glamorous like Tammy Wynette, or sweet like Kitty Wells. She had a sharp mountain twang and an attitude that wasn't manufactured for radio. She was the real deal. And institutions didn't quite know how to market that at first. But fans did. Listeners felt like they already knew her. That authenticity cut through the industry noise and made her unstoppable. Her songwriting style, simple words, stunning impact. Loretta's lyrics weren't flowery. They weren't metaphor heavy. They were plain spoken, and that's what made them powerful. She wrote like a storyteller sitting at a kitchen table, not a poet locked in a study. What she mastered was point of view. Her songs often felt like a monologue aimed at a cheating spouse, another woman, society, her own heart, or sometimes God. This directness gave her music intimacy. You didn't feel like you were listening to a song. You felt like you were overhearing someone's real thoughts. The courage it took to sing certain songs. People often forget how conservative radio was when Loretta was releasing hits. Singing "The Pill" in 1975 wasn't just bold, it was dangerous for her career. Stations refused to play it. Preachers slammed it in sermons. Some stores wouldn't carry the single. Loretta didn't back down. She said, "I don't write for nobody but the women who live like me." That line is the heart of her legacy. The Loretta Lynn tough love personality. Loretta was warm, funny, friendly, but she didn't mince words. Plenty of stories from musicians and stage crews talk about how she could snap into boss mode whenever something wasn't right. She wasn't mean, just direct. She was the kind of person who'd hug you, then fix your collar, then tell you to sing with your diaphragm because you sounded nasal today. Her siblings and family talent. The Webb family wasn't short on talent. Her sister Crystal Gayle became a country pop superstar. Another sister, Peggy Sue, had a solid career. Their younger brother Herman Webb was the caretaker of the Butcher Hollow homeplace for decades. Loretta was proud of her siblings, but she also said something funny in interviews: "We all could sing. But I had something to write about." The tragedies that shadowed her life. Loretta's life wasn't without deep loss. Her son Jack Benny Lynn died in 1984 at age 34 in an accident on the family ranch. Her daughter Betty Sue died in 2013 at age 64. She lost several siblings along the way. Fans often talk about how her grief seemed to deepen her music in her later years. Even when the songs weren't explicitly about loss, the emotional weight was there, in her voice, her phrasing, her eyes. Her relationship with Dolly Parton, two queens. No rivalry. People love to talk about rivalries between famous women, but Dolly and Loretta never played that game. They had a mutual adoration built on shared roots and shared struggles. Dolly once said, "Loretta was a sister, an influence, and a firecracker. There'll never be another like her." They admired each other's success without jealousy. That alone makes their friendship special in music history. A master of story songs. Some of her best tracks are essentially short films. The Coal Miner's Daughter, You're Lookin' at Country, One's on the Way. The Home You're Tearin' Down, she could set a full scene in a few verses. You could picture the kitchen, the fight, the barroom, the porch swing. It's why filmmakers loved adapting her life. She already wrote script-ready material. Her place in the Mount Rushmore of country music. If country music had a stone monument for its greats, Loretta would be up there with Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, Willie Nelson, Hank Williams, George Jones. She belongs in that rare class of artists who transformed the genre instead of just participating in it. The myth and the woman. Loretta Lynn became an iconic figure, but she never let the myth swallow the person. She still canned vegetables. She still worried about her kids. She still spent evenings watching TV with her family. The bigger her name got, the more she held on to simple comforts. That groundedness is why people connected to her so deeply. Why Loretta Lynn will always matter, because she represents something universal. The courage to tell your truth, the resilience to rise above hardship, the power of a real voice in a polished world, the strength of a woman who refuses to be silenced, the possibility that greatness can come from the poorest holler in Kentucky. Loretta Lynn isn't just part of country music. She's part of American folklore. The kind passed down from generation to generation, sung in living rooms, remembered with a smile, and honored with deep reverence. Loretta Lynn, the untold corners, quiet battles, and human moments that defined her. Her voice wasn't technically perfect, but it was emotionally unmatched. Loretta didn't have the operatic power of Patsy Cline or the silkiness of Tammy Wynette. What she had was something rarer, emotional directness. Her voice had a built-in honesty, like a friend confiding in you on the front porch. She hit notes in ways that felt less like technique and more like instinct. Producers used to joke that you didn't tell Loretta how to sing a line. You just hit record, because she always knew how to phrase a lyric so it carried a sting, or a wink, or a heartbreak. Her voice aged beautifully. Even when it got raspier, it gained warmth. Like a quilt that softened over decades. Her songs reflected a marriage that was both turbulent and unbreakable. Loretta was brutally honest about Doolittle Lynn. He drank, he strayed, he argued. He pushed her buttons. But he also pushed her onto stages, believed wholeheartedly in her talent, and helped her become the icon she became. They fought hard. They loved hard. They made it work in their own way. Some of her best songs came straight from that tension. Don't Come Home a Drinkin', Lead Me On, Fist City. You Ain't Woman Enough. She never painted him as a villain, just a complicated man she loved fiercely. Loretta's songwriting wasn't just autobiographical, it was strategic. People often assume Loretta simply wrote whatever popped into her head, but there was craft behind the candor. She had a natural grip on meter, rhythm, conversational pacing, emotional narrative arcs. She'd take a universal story and lace it with specific, vivid details. A kitchen, a neighbor woman, a slammed door, a child crying in the next room. Those details made listeners feel like her songs were about them. She was funny, not cute funny, but sharp, quick, unfiltered funny. Loretta had a mischievous streak. She'd roast interviewers. She'd tease Conway Twitty on stage. She'd joke with fans about their outfits, their marriages, their hair. One of her famous lines when asked about her success, "I'm not a star. I'm an old woman who sings." Another, when asked how she stayed married so long, "Because I was on the road half the time." Her humor made her approachable. It also helped her survive the hard stuff. She was a natural leader. Even if she never bragged about it, people around her, band members, tour managers, family, often said she had a kind of quiet authority. She didn't shout, but everyone could tell when she meant business. If a sound check was sloppy, she'd fix it. If the lighting wasn't right, she'd say so. If a musician didn't hit a cue, she'd give them a look that said everything. She didn't lead through ego. She led because she cared deeply about the work. Her relationship with Conway Twitty was pure artistic. Lightning fans loved speculating that something romantic was going on. Loretta always shut that down. They were close, but not that way. What they did have was chemistry, trust, and a shared sense of humor. Their duets worked because Conway had velvet-smooth phrasing, Loretta had emotional punch. They balanced each other perfectly. Loretta said losing Conway in 1993 broke a piece of her heart permanently. The pressure of fame hit her harder than people realize. Loretta wasn't a natural spotlight chaser. She wasn't hungry for fame. Her rise was so fast and so intense that it overwhelmed her at times. She dealt with anxiety, exhaustion, loneliness in hotel rooms, pressure to top the last hit. She'd sometimes call her children in tears, wanting to go home. But she also loved performing. That push-pull never ended. The toll of being a woman who worked like a man in the 1960s and 70s. Loretta didn't just sing about tough women. She was one. She was on the road constantly, juggling motherhood and music in an era when that was almost unheard of. She drove her own bus sometimes. She booked her own shows in the early days. She handled contracts before she had a lawyer. It was exhausting and groundbreaking at the same time. She never outgrew her roots. Not once. Loretta could have leaned into glamour, but she didn't. She stayed connected to Kentucky her entire life. She visited Butcher Hollow often. She stayed close to her siblings. She kept up Appalachian traditions. She cooked every Sunday when she was home. Fame didn't change her core. It just gave her a wider stage for it. Her late-life creativity was shockingly strong. Some artists fade in their later years. Loretta did the opposite. Albums like Van Leer Rose and Full Circle feel like the work of someone with nothing left to prove and everything left to express. Her writing got deeper, more reflective. She sounded like a woman who'd lived every line. Loretta Lynn, in one sentence, if you had to sum her up, it would be something like a woman who sang the truth even when the truth made people uncomfortable, and who did it with humor, grit, and a heart that stayed wide open.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.